Good morning and welcome to this week's Found It, Fetched It. This week I decided to do something a little bit different and talk to you about the 10 lessons that I've learned over 10 years of LWDG. So for 10 years we've been helping real women, real dogs and every hard conversation in between. Here's what we've learned and what your dog needs to know right now. So when I started the LWDG 10 years ago, I wasn't really trying to build a community. I was trying to personally make sense of a problem that I was going through. And as I got into it, I kept seeing it everywhere. Women with brilliant, high drive, working dogs, trying to do everything right and still feeling like they were absolutely getting it wrong. I realized over those 10 years that it wasn't so much that the people themselves were failing, it was more that the advice they were being given was. And I'll talk to you a little bit about that as we go through the lessons. So a decade later, I've had thousands of conversations with handlers just like you, and I've watched what works and I've watched what backfires and what nobody in the gun dog world is really wanting to say out loud. So these are the 10 things I wish every pet gun dog owner understood, not because they're rules, but because you'll get on far better with your dog if you work with them every single day. So lesson number 1. Your dog isn't being difficult as much as it sometimes feels they are. They're just being a gun dog. Working breeds were purpose-built to run, to problem solve, to use their nose and mouths and drive all day long without switching off. When your spaniel tears apart your house or your retriever grabs everything in sight, that's not you failing to train them properly. That's the breed doing what it was designed to do in a context which doesn't match the design. And what I mean by that is your breed was meant to go out and work, come home, live in kennels with other dogs. It wasn't made to be a sofa dog. That doesn't mean they're not good sofa dogs, because they absolutely are. But its breed wasn't designed for that. So understanding what you've actually got is the first step to training what you want. You're going to have to teach, and we say it all the time, you're going to have to teach a predator to be a pet. And that takes a little bit more time with a gun dog than maybe it does with breed lines that were focused to become calm, happy dogs, sit on the sofa, do nothing, because those breeds exist as well. So the dog isn't the problem, it's the mismatch. And I say problem, it isn't a problem when you're aware of it, because how you train them, how you live life with them can be adapted just slightly to actually work with that. So lesson number 2, energy management beats exercise every time. And what I mean by that is this: you will not outwalk a gun dog. I've never seen anybody outwalk a gun dog. And more walks don't produce a calmer dog. They just produce a fitter one. So instead of you living with a very slow predator, you live with an incredibly athletic predator. And I use the word predator and people go, oh, my pet's not a predator. Yeah, they absolutely are. So when you're training a hunting dog, a gun dog, you're having to work with that drive, like I just said. So a working breed with unstructured, high adrenaline exercise is a working breed building stamina and arousal. It's not draining it. So you've got them basically training for a marathon they're never going to do. What you manage before and after the walk matters more than the walk itself. So doing things like small hunting games, search and find, scent work, structured training, calm decompression, these are what moves the needle to a calmer dog. And when I say calm decompression, it's working on training your dog things like self-control and steadiness, so it can manage its own adrenaline levels, it can manage its own arousal. If your dog is wired the moment you get home, the problem was never your effort. You went out and did the work. It was the type of effort. So yes, you absolutely can have a gun dog that will walk miles with you, go to the beach, go up the mountain. Ours do. But you have to know that that isn't the thing that's going to control their energy. That is just part of the overall package you've got to put together for your dog. So lesson 3. The two minds are not a metaphor, they're a manual, okay? And what I mean by that is this is something we teach deeply within the LWDG. And it's about knowing that every dog operates from 2 states, the thinking and learning brain and an instinctive and reactive one. We had a fabulous guest expert the other day talking to us about the chimp paradox. She was talking about safety when out walking with dogs, and she talked about the chimp paradox as part of her conversation with us. And as she was talking to us about it, I was actually thinking, that's quite like a gun dog. You have these two different parts of the brain that you're needing to work with at all times. When your dog is over threshold, and I'm cautious how I use that word because our experts talk about this all the time, about what over threshold actually means. So I'm not going to go into that in this podcast, otherwise we'll be here for an hour and turn into a masterclass. But basically, when they get overwhelmed, too excited, too scared, the thinking brain is going offline. No amount of training will reach it, okay? So when your dog hits that point, there is no point trying harder to train. Your job as their owner at that point isn't to train harder, it's to bring them back online first. So once you understand what mind you're dealing with at any given moment in your dog, everything about what you do from that point will change. How you respond will change. So you can't teach a dog who's not in the room with you. You really do have to get them to just chill out a little bit. And that can be as easy as popping on a lead and just sitting down while you eat your sandwiches. Like I always go back to that analogy, but I think if you can just sit and calm them down, they can sort of decompress beside you. When you can get a spaniel, or this is how I look at it with my spaniels, when you can get a spaniel to be interested in your sandwich, they're calm, because normally when they're over aroused, they're not interested in anything that you've got to give them to eat. And we hear this from people all the time. They say to us, my dog won't take a treat when we're outside. It's because your dog is really, really wound up in that situation. So it's about bringing them back online. That being said, you don't need to make sure your dog can eat a sandwich every time you throw a dummy, but it's about this balance. So lesson 4, consistency isn't about being strict. It is about being readable. And what I mean by that is dogs don't need you to be harsh or loud. They need you to be clear. The confusion that causes most pet gundog problems isn't a lack of rules. It's rules that keep on changing depending on who's in the room, how tired you are, whether or not you've got guests. Your dog is constantly reading information from you about whether it's safe, what's to expect, what's coming next. And when you keep on scrambling your signal, the behavior becomes scrambled too. So consistency is a way of being kind to our dogs. It's not a control strategy. It's about letting them know that you're going to ask of them the same things each time. A point that I made there about who's in the room is really part of this as well, because if you're really, really consistent when you ask for something, but the rest of the family let them get away with murder, it can be hard for the dog to know what consistent behavior in a home looks like. So it's about consistency across the board, but talking to your family in this way and explaining to them, if you all ask the same thing, the dog gets a better way of living with you. So lesson 5, we're halfway there. You are allowed to be the handler you are, not the one you think you should be. This was probably one of the hardest lessons I had to learn, okay? 10 years of conversations, and the single most damaging thing I see is the gap between a woman who thinks she should be a handler and who she actually is at that point, and the guilt that lives in that gap. The handler your dog needs is you showing up, honestly, learning as you go, not being a perfect version of you, not the person like you see on social media or on YouTube that's got it all sussed because they've been doing it for 20 years. They need you. The training that sticks is always the training that fits your lifestyle. You have to find a way to just learn with them and not feel guilty about that. Like for me, every day is a learning day. Every time you have a new dog, every day is a learning day. So you just get used to feeling calm by the fact that you don't have all the answers for the dog in front of you all of the time. And that is absolutely fine. You don't need to. Some of the top trialers you will see competing some of the best dogs in the UK and the world will have brilliant days, and then they'll have days when they will walk off the field and say, it was an off day. It didn't go as it should have. But that's fine. And they've accepted that it's not always perfect. You need to do that too. So my lesson 6 for you, recall is a relationship skill and not a command. And what I mean by this is if your dog doesn't come back reliably, the question isn't normally what method you're using. It's whether coming back to you is genuinely worth it from the dog's point of view. So we've talked about what they were bred for, what they are meant to do, what their genetics tell them they want to do. And in that moment, in that environment, with that level of distraction, whether they'll come back to you or not depends on how interesting you are. Recall is built in the moments that have nothing to do with actually calling your dog. It's built in every interaction you've had with them, every reward, every time you've made returning to you feel like the best decision they've made all day. So for a lot of us, we start teaching recall when we are going to feed, because the dog learns through repetition, through habit, and through behavior that those pips on the whistle means they're going to eat. Now, for most gun dogs, especially when they're very young, that is the best reward. They love it. So it's a great time to build in habits. But it's more than that. It's about as they get older and that when that food is not as exciting as it was when they were little, it's the other things that you do. So when you pip them back to you and you're excited that they come, and when you pip them back to you and just make it that they want to be with you. I always think the recall is a little bit like dating. Like if every time you turned up to a date, it was boring as hell, and like, I don't know, you just wish you hadn't actually gone to it, that's when your recall is all over the place. And through no fault of our own, because we don't know what we don't know, sometimes we've done this with our recall because we've recalled and put a lead on and put them in the car and they're like, oh, you're boring. That whistle means I'm not going to keep on having fun. So you've got to make sure that your recall doesn't become a really bad date. It has to be a really good date, and then the next thing comes after. Because obviously we do still have to do things like pop them in the car or take them home. But make sure that the recall part of it is really fun. And the reason I've put this into my lessons is this. I think it's one of the saddest things that people struggle with because it feels personal. If the dog won't come back to us and would rather be anywhere other than with us, we feel like it was because we weren't enough. And it tends to be that it's not that we weren't enough. It's just that we've accidentally made the dog think it's going to be a bad date. So lesson 7, let's talk about the fact that the gun dog world wasn't built really for me and you, but that doesn't mean that the knowledge isn't. And what I mean by that is traditional gun dog training carries decades of genuinely useful instinct, structure, and understanding of working breeds, okay? It also carries a culture that can, sadly, feel unwelcoming to women keeping these dogs as families' pets outside of a shooting context. You do not have to choose between the knowledge that that world carries and your values. So what I mean by that is this. The best of what the field knows about drive, focus, working with breed instinct absolutely applies to your dog on a daily life, whether you intend to take it on an estate or not. We have loads and loads of members who join and will say, I'm never going to work my dog. And we say, absolutely fine. You are still welcome here and we still want you to access the learning because there's so much value in it for the life you're going to have for the next 10, 15, 20 years with the dog in front of you, okay? What you can learn can absolutely help you to have the best time, the best relationship with your dog. And you deserve access to that. But if you find that the traditional gun dog world has been unwelcoming, which sometimes sadly people have found that, and it is sad because on the whole gun dog world is absolutely great people. And the more you get involved in them, the more you'll find that. But if you have found that it hasn't been kind to you, you can still use parts of it. There's no need, as people would say, to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? It's literally a case of keep what you want from that situation and leave what doesn't suit you or doesn't sit with you. And that's the same, not just of the gun dog world, but from other training as well. I have learned loads from lots of different training schools because I've refused to sit inside one of them. And our experts tend to learn from all different areas. And that's what makes them great experts. They haven't stamped themselves through like a stick of rock from the beach with one way of doing it and said, we can't change. They're very much a case of what can we learn? Where can we go? What can we learn from anywhere else in the world that can help us with the dogs we have in front of us? Lesson 8. What your dog does in one context won't automatically transfer. Now, this normally blows people's brains. A dog who sits perfectly in the kitchen and explodes out of the car park is not taking the mick out of you. Dogs don't generalize in the way we assume they do. Every new environment, every new level of distraction is a new lesson. And it's not a test whether the old one was working or worked. The handler who understands this stops feeling let down when the training doesn't hold and starts proofing deliberately instead. So you can make sure that your proofing is made up in a way where the dog does learn over time to generalize from one context to another, but that there is a plan for that generalization to become part of their behavior. The dog that will sit in the garden is not the dog that will sit outside of the garden. You have to work with them to build that. And it isn't the case that your dog is ignoring you. You've just taken them to somewhere they haven't trained yet. And once you train there and put in the work, go back to the start, put in the work in the new place, they'll be good there too. But you have to do that, knowing that every time you go to a new place, you've got to step back a little to step forward. Lesson 9, slow is not the same as behind. Some of the most capable working dogs I've ever encountered were trained really slowly, carefully, and without the pressure to reach anyone else's timeline. We have a fabulous podcast called The Working Dog Age Race. It's right at the beginning, it's number 11. And it's all about training your dog at the pace that suits them. The speed at which your dog learns is not a measure of your ability or their ability. Russian produces dogs who perform brilliantly under ideal conditions and fall apart under real ones. So you might have a dog that in a training field gives you beautiful behavior, and then you take them somewhere else and they just fall apart because the whole situation has changed. It ties in a little bit with what we just said in lesson 8, because it's not automatically transferring. And if you're rushing them to get it right in each place, it's not going to help the dog at all. The handler who resists the urge to move on, to push before something is solid, are the ones who end up with dogs they can absolutely trust. So my final lesson of 10 years. The dog you have right now is already the dog you wanted. Not the finished version, not the one you'll have in 2 years' time when the recall is solid and the lead walk-in is effortless. The one in front of you today has a relationship that's building with you in ordinary moments. The walks where they really get it wrong, the sessions that have gone so sideways it's not true, the evening you sat on the floor and just existed together, like Arthur for me, probably one of the biggest spaniels I've ever met, insists on sitting on my lap. So I sit on the floor, he sits on me, and it's like having a 9-year-old child trying to sit with you. But it builds relationship, and he loves it, I love it. It's soothing for both of us. 10 years of watching women with working dogs has taught me this. The ones who get there aren't the ones who found a shortcut. They're the ones who stayed absolutely with it and worked with the dog in front of them. And 10 years on, this is still what I believe. The right dog isn't a breed or a bloodline. It's the one that actually makes you grow. Because having a relationship with a gun dog does actually make you a better person. Without doubt, it teaches you more patience. Without doubt, it teaches you more innovation in your thinking. Without doubt, it teaches you more around problem solving. Without doubt, it teaches you more creativity. So next time you're feeling frustrated with the dog you have right now, just think, I will become a better person in 1 year or 2 years' time because I spent time helping you to become a better family pet. I hope you've enjoyed this podcast, a little bit different. Very rarely I talk on my own, but I wanted to do the 10 lessons because there is a lot that we've taken from the 10 years. What is in your next 10 years? Like, what do you want to get out of it? Let me know in like the DMs, subscribe, share, send me messages on like social media, Facebook or on Instagram. I'd love to hear them from you. It would be absolutely fabulous. So to every woman who showed up, asked hard questions, tried again after the session when it went wrong, and chose to understand her dog rather than fight it, thank you, because you are why the LWDG exists. You are why this exists. And we thank you all from the bottom of our hearts for making this a community that absolutely does take care of those inside it.